Welcome everyone. If we could take our seats, please. You get better grades if you sit in the front and not hide behind people. So, right. Welcome. I'm going to do my outdoor voice in a minute. So, if we can call to attention. No. So before we start the formal part of the meeting, I think we should get one of the best bits of it out first and have a showcase from Julie McKinnon about what we're doing to move care closer to the community. So Julie, can I hand over to you, please? That's another voice heard from.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name's Julie McKinnon, and I work for Virtual Wards. I'm operational lead for admission avoidance. Thank you very much for inviting me to share some of our innovations. Is somebody going to magically move my slides on? Lovely. Don't have many. Yeah. There we go. There we are. So I'm just going to talk about some of the initiatives that I've been working on through the virtual ward. Oh, back a little bit of out of control. There we go. Next one. Oh, are they in the wrong order? Oh, keep going. I might have to jump around and keep you all on your feet because they've all jumped when I wasn't looking. Can you go forward? Yeah, it's the Lincoln Services. There we go. Right. Oh, gosh. There we go. Thank you. Right, so I'm mainly going to talk to you about Virtual Ward and the SDEC, which is the same-day emergency care. The Virtual Ward isn't really a new initiative, but I think that what we've been doing this year is slightly new with it, so I think it's really good to sort of celebrate that. Do we all know about Virtual Ward? Because sometimes it is a little bit difficult to get your head around, but it is a full ward, like you would expect. It has a consultant, it has doctors, it has ANPs, our advanced nurse practitioners, a pharmacist, and nurses and health cares. And so they undertake monitoring of blood pressures, temperatures and pulses. They have huddles, they have ward rounds. So they're doing everything that you would normally expect in a hospital, but they are doing it in people's own home, which a lot of people actually like. So we have this year seen an increase in referrals, and we've seen some new pathways. And the reason we've been able to do that, I think, is because CFT has done a lot of work. The virtual ward team have done a lot of work this year on understanding the model and really understanding what our neighbourhood wants. So they've looked at the governance. The governance now sits with CFT, and that is giving our local communities much more confidence in what we can offer and the way we can look after the patients and people in the community. It also has allowed us to build our links with our ambulance colleagues in SWAST. We're now able to, this time of year, we're able to SWAST see somebody at home and phone Virtual Ward direct. And it's that sort of more immediate access that we have to our virtual wards this year that has been really good. We're sort of really growing that model. And then what we're really building on is a step-up, step-down admission. So we looked at all of our patients that were actually ending up on the virtual ward, and we tried to find out what was the common factor before they ended up maybe on the virtual ward, maybe ended up in the emergency department. And what we were really finding actually is they already had those sort of soft signs that we call them, whereby somebody might have been on oral antibiotics because they weren't quite right at home. They might have had a cough. They might have had a fall. They might have just had that little ill health episode that didn't require an emergency department, but actually we could do some monitoring, do some management of their antibiotics, look to see if there's any more signs. And so we're able to go out to our GPs and say, look, you've just seen this patient, you've done a really good assessment of your patient, but you're not going to see them for another 2 days, which is a great plan. But in between that, your patient condition could change. And so what we're able to talk to our GPs was to actually say, between your visits, put them on the virtual ward. We might notice that raise in temperature or that sort of spike of temperature. We might see their blood pressure dipping because they're dehydrated. And what it meant was we could pick up those signs of infection much earlier. And then with the pharmacist being, if they weren't on the right antibiotics, we could change them. So there's all sorts of things that we could do that we were able to offer our GPs and our community teams this year that meant that we've been held to have a better occupancy. We've had more referrals to the virtual ward, which is really, really important. The reason I've got these two sort of initiatives on the same slide is the fact that the relationship between these two entities is really important for the work that we want to do going forward. So in January, it feels like it's always been open, but in January of this year, we opened a same-day emergency care. So NHS England are very keen to promote not just the virtual ward, but actually this new kind of initiative. We have some SDECs around the country. We have some SDEC models in emergency departments. But what made this slightly different when we opened it in the Bodmin Community Hospital is that actually it was standalone from all of our other sort of services. We were able to have cubicles with chairs in, and we were able to do a rapid assessment on the same day. So they were able to see a doctor, able to see a nurse. And we also have, if you're not don't know about this, CATUs, Community Assessment Treatment Units in our hospitals. So if somebody needed, after their rapid assessment, to have a treatment, they could then be referred into the CATU, and they might stay there for 2 or 3 days. And that might be something like, if they're dehydrated, we can give them some fluids. If they've got a small infection and they need to have some IV antibiotics, that they could have that for 2 or 3 days and then go home. In fact, that's one of my favourite patients, is the ones that actually, they're not quite right. They might have had a fall, they're a little bit dehydrated. We give them some fluids, we give them a couple of square meals, nice sort of crumble pudding with custard on, as the NHS is our favourite thing to do. And then they sort of get better and they say, can I go home? And we say yes. And all of this is very important because actually we want to stop them from getting more acutely unwell. So the really good thing about the SDEC, the other good thing, is the rule out opportunities. So if our colleagues in the community have seen somebody who is not quite right, they're not actually performing at the same level, they're not quite as cheerful in their own environment, it means actually that we can see them and get some bloods done that day. We can actually look at, the doctor can have a look at them, listen to their heart, listen to their story, watch them in their sort of, are they able to get up and down from the chair easily, all those kind of things. We can just check they're okay in a non-intrusive way, and then we can link them into our community teams then for that extra. Maybe they need to have their home environment assessed. Maybe they just need a couple of days help because actually they're on oral antibiotics, they're not quite right, and it just helps them get back on their feet. So the ideal thing about the virtual ward and the SDEC working together is that actually we can, we've been able this winter, just gone, and through the summer, develop a sort of step up, step down type of model. And that will help us avoid the acute setting for those who don't need to be there. But I think also the really important thing about the SDEC is it gives people confidence for the virtual ward, because the virtual ward in isolation might not necessarily be all that we need if somebody's not well enough to go home and be looked after. But the virtual ward by default has therefore been able to accept some quite unwell patients in their own home this year, because actually we've been able to have the backup of the SDEC. So between the two, if you're being looked after on the virtual ward and you're not feeling as well as you were the day before, or your blood pressure's gone up, or your tablets needs some more sort of assessment, then actually you can be referred to the SDEC as the same day. And then it might be that they go straight back home and back onto the virtual ward. So it really is a kind of very kind of dynamic way of looking after people. And it doesn't matter if they come in and out a couple of days in a row. It means that they haven't actually had to go to the acute. It's okay if you need to go to acute. It's all about right patient, right time, right place. That really is true. There are people who need to go there. But if you don't need to go to the acute, then actually you can be managed through the virtual wards. So it's been very exciting this year that we've been able to develop that relationship and that we've been able to open the ESDEC in Bodmin. And that gives us confidence that hopefully we can do that in our other community hospitals. Can I have another slide? I'm not quite sure which way we're going. But that one. So I've just got a couple because it's nice to see. But actually, if you look at this slide, you can just see that it's the occupancy, virtual ward admission, so people coming on this time last year in relation to the previous year. So you can actually see that we still have room for more, as it were. But the interesting thing is that, you know, you still need to have flow. We talk about flow in and out of a hospital ward, but you also need to have flow in and out of the virtual ward. So while our occupancy isn't 100%, it is able to work very dynamically as a ward within a hospital, so that while you're admitting lots of people every day, then you would want to discharge them as well. So, next slide. This is just of interest really, because even though we've opened an ESDEC in Bodmin, we were able to actually take patients from all over Cornwall. And I think that's the really good thing about virtual ward as well, is cross Cornwall. It is one virtual ward, and I think that that helps us have a different approach to the way we sort of look at people. It isn't that far really from here to Bodmin, but actually the good news is they have opened an ESDEC in Penzance, and we are, am I allowed to say that, hoping to open one in Camborne very soon. So it just is surprising how far people will come just to be in their own home and not go to a big hospital when they don't need to. So just a few little figures to give you a taster, because we have stayed open. It was a trial. In the first 8 weeks, we did see 200 patients in the ESDEC in Bodmin Hospital, which was great, because it was Monday to Friday at that point. And that we were able to, 36% of that time, were able to be managed within the same day. So they came in, we saw them, and they went straight back home, which was great as a starter. 11% in total didn't even come in. So sometimes we have a chat with the referrer, have a discussion, and we just, you know, it's nice that we can actually make solutions. Because I think when you're a community, a member of the community team, it's quite a lonely place sometimes. Sometimes as two professionals having that conversation about what you can do for your patient is actually very reassuring. So 48 were managed within 3 days in the CATU. So 24% of our patients were actually came into the CATU and had a little treatment and then went back home again. I think the most important number, which is my favourite actually, is that 91% didn't need to go to an acute hospital. And I think that was the really exciting thing about our ESDEC, and that's why I think it stayed open, because it was so good. Next slide. So I think that the biggest thing is that it gives us opportunity. So I think as an innovation and as an exciting piece of work, it allows us to build. Sometimes, you know, as a healthcare professional, you think that sometimes there's a new initiative and that then you have a new initiative next year. But there was a message from NHS England that actually this year was going to be different. We had to sort of make do with what we had, sort of thing. And we were lucky because we had the ESDEC. So it's that balance, isn't it? I think previously you were at home and then you became being well managed, but the only alternative was the acute trust. And I think that balance has been well managed, shall we say, by our colleagues, but holding a lot of risk. But I think the difference now is that there's something in between that, so that you have that step up and step down, and that hopefully we'll avoid the acute. And actually from the ESDEC in Bodmin, and I'm sure that will continue, I think it's 7% of patients are sent to the acute from there once they've had their assessment, and that's an appropriate number. They're going for the right reason, to see the right people. Next, I think there's one more. Yeah, so I think that this winter coming is exciting because we can build on what we created last year. It is cross Cornwall and it is part of the technology strategy. So the fact that we have got this core team that is all about digital, it's which doesn't always feel very healthcare orientated, like a nurse. It doesn't feel right, but actually it's a complement, I think, to what we can offer a patient as a healthcare professional. And the fact that we've got virtual wards working together with the ESDEC and the CATU, and they are already linking in as professionals, means that we can therefore start looking at the development of a joint assessment model, whereby there will be a senior medical presence around for our colleagues in the community to talk to every day. That's 7 days a week. Because the ESDEC links into the CATU, it means it's 24 hours a day, which is another exciting thing. But I think we're also changing in our approach as well. We're trying to move away from those traditional kind of principles when we're looking after patients and receiving referrals. And we're just being very, why is that person here? It's not to treat every long-term condition they have. It's because actually they might have a urinary tract infection, something as simple as that. And if we can give them those sorts of the antibiotics they require, and then we can support them to go home, it means we really are avoiding admission, which is a really exciting thing, because actually that is the way forward. I think the sort of keeping people at home, helping them recover at home, is what we're trying to do locally with the sort of neighbourhoods, and sort of wraparound care will come, I hope, from the use of technology. So I think we were just talking about that, wasn't there? There's that lot of issues about patient safety. Is it safe for somebody to be at home? And what we've been linking to over the summer is been linking into all our volunteer sector, a lot of the initiatives where some of our care providers have been working together as well as a joint team. It means that because we're stepping them up through the virtual ward, through the ESDEC, they haven't had that long decondition period of being in an acute. That's nobody's fault. It's just that by the time they get there, they are more unwell. If we can actually step them up and get that sort of more dynamic approach to their care, then we are more able to actually link into all of the volunteer sector availability, because there's lots. And it isn't always sometimes about having care either in that traditional sense. It's about all those other things that get a little bit difficult for everyone to manage when they're not feeling quite right. And then we're looking into other sorts of technology as well. So we're looking at some of the digital initiatives for sensor monitoring and assessment. So you put sort of, you monitor people's movements in the home, and therefore you can have a report of their normal patterns. And then, for example, when they have a pattern that's not right, then you can step them up to see their GP, because actually they might be going to the loo more frequently than they were before. It gives reassurance to families, it gives reassurance to colleagues, and actually it's used for a lot of time for problem solving. So why is somebody having a problem, I don't know, with their nighttime needs? An example I had the other day was that somebody's bed was too high, and they couldn't find that out until actually they'd monitor them at home, and then they were able to get a proper bed in, and then they were able to do what they needed to do during the night, every night. And that alternative would have been potentially 24-hour care, which is what they were looking at. So there's things like that. And I've also, which is my favourite, come across a companion robot, and you can set it up. It's a bit like Alexa, but it's, you know, it might not just be a little box. It's got a kind of humanoid shape, which some people find a bit strange, but it's just another way of actually, for people who are lonely, people who may be living with dementia, sometimes that loneliness can manifest itself in symptoms that mean that they end up in an ED department in an emergency. And so if you can actually set them up with something that is reassuring them, their families, and us, because we also worry about them, then I think that that sort of is really positive. So I think that we've had a very exciting year with the introduction of the ESDEC. We've been able to grow our virtual ward. They're coming together really nicely, and then it's opening all sorts of opportunities for us to really try and avoid the acute services this winter, and maybe help relieve some of the pressures. So that's what we've been up to. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Julie.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, I think that would be.
Can I ask a question, Margaret?
Yes.
Just very early on, you said you talked to GPs. Could you kind of explain how that works? Because I know most of the people I know come accustomed to what do I know. It's the length of time it takes them to actually talk to their own GPs.
Yes.
How does that?
Well, I wrote to the GP practice managers, and they invited me to go along. I explained what I was doing, and I popped along and had a chat with them. And I think that they were very engaged in how they could support us, work with us, and how they could use our services to support what they're trying to do for their patients, because they have lots of initiatives over the winter. So, for example, in Bodmin last winter, we had a respiratory clinic, and we sort of held appointments in the Bodmin clinic to sort of relieve their pressures for appointments. So, you know, not all GPs responded, but I did go out. I've seen most of them, but I just went along and had a chat at their staff meetings. Sometimes it's 8 o'clock in the morning, lunchtimes. Mm.
But would it be more sensible for you to be the first point of so they phone you first because for some reason, or even a neighbour if they haven't seen them for a couple of days, and then when you've contacted them, they would tell you that their GP will take it from there, but you have to wait for it to be.
No, I think that sometimes when GPs are seeing the patients, they do a full assessment and then they put a plan of action in. And I don't know if you've done it yourself, but you go to the GP, he says, oh, you've got a chest infection. He says, come back in 3 days' time if you're not feeling better. And the point we were trying to say, so I went along just to explain really that if they were to use the virtual ward for that time, it might be that that person is fine. The antibiotics work and they go back to being normal and everything's okay. But it might be actually that the chest infection doesn't improve. And so therefore the virtual ward would then pick up on the vital signs to do that. But the SDEC and the virtual ward, it is direct referral, and it comes from anybody that has a patient in front of them who is unwell at that time. And sometimes it's the GPs.
Any other questions? Really? A quick question. Thank you, Julie. Slowly. Thank you, Julie. Just a very quick question. In terms of the patients receiving care from the vet, what's the sort of age profiling? No, I was making assumptions in my mind, but I thought I would just.
Well, in the SDEC, it is living with frailty.
Yeah.
And so that means that anybody who is not as can't run a marathon really, can't, you know, there's degrees. So if you look, we use what we call the Rockwood scale, and it is about your ability to be active, to be mobile, and there's sort of varying degrees. So it could be that you're elderly and therefore you have a frailty score, but it could be that you have a long-term condition or a disability that makes you sort of less able to move freely. So there isn't really an age cut-off for the SDEC CATU, but most of our patients with a frailty are elderly, and those are our main group. But within the virtual ward, it's a much more open kind of referral, so we do take younger people. It came about in the COVID pandemic, so it was all about respiratory or frailty, and when you've got your respiratory problems, quite often you get a younger group of patients.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, purely selfishly, I live in the Launceston area, and I noticed there was a huge gap, nothing around Launceston. Have you got any plans to open an SDEC in Launceston?
Well, at the moment, we are linking in with Launceston, and they come to Bodmin. So I don't know. That's probably a question for Debbie for the future. I know that there are questions about how many SDECs we can have because it.
Public
Yeah.
transport to get to Bodmin.
Indeed. Yes.
£80 for a taxi one way.
I know. So that's not a question I can answer, but we do link in with them. We're also linking in with UHP at Derriford because they have an SDEC and virtual ward there. But again, it'd be nicer if you didn't have to go that way. I think it's quicker to Bodmin, but forgive my geography, it's not always brilliant. So we are very much engaged with that part of the world. And I'm still linking in with GPs as well. So going to Saltash next week. And also I've been recently, I went to the Bodmin surgeries and I went out with the Wadebridge and Port Isaac surgeries, and I've worked with the duty doctors, so I've spent some time with them. And so we are linking in a very sort of meaningful way, I think, to try and work out what we can do. So I think that will spread. Well, yes. Only live in Carnival.
John?
Thank you, Margaret. You'll probably tell me I should know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. Fascinating, and look, just the virtual ward part, so many intrinsic benefits. Of course, one of the benefits is that it's not constrained by a building and how many beds you can get into it. Is there a model by which we would determine if we reached capacity on a virtual ward? Is that around acuity as well as numbers?
No, it's more to do, well, you set it up in exactly the same way, so you would need to know how many doctors, nurses, healthcares that you would need to be able to manage a certain number of patients. And there's various elements to the virtual ward, so I think it's about 200 patients we can take. But as I said, it's all about the flow, really. And so I think that's the way that we've really got to crack. That's our next challenge, really, which is the exciting thing, is that actually you don't want to put people on virtual ward and they stay there for a long time. You want them to be actually managed and discharged, so that actually you can have more. It's just that you're discharging as well as admitting. So we want high numbers of referral, which is our next target this winter. But we have to keep ourselves sort of match fit, as it were, and make sure that we're not holding on to them. And I think that's where all the sort of technology things that we're linking into will help. If we can hand over to a little robot, maybe.
Thanks, Julie. That's helpful.
Any other questions for Julie? Exciting things that you're doing. Okay. Thank you very much, Julie. Now we'll move on to the the formal part of the meeting. I should remind you, if you need to, that the loos are through this door. This is fire exit. We're not planning on a fire drill, so if the alarm goes off, head for the exits. I think that's all the housekeeping I need to do. Welcome to our annual members meeting for the year ended in April 2024. So the first order of business is apologies, and I'm not going to read out the whole list, but I will read the list of apologies from our governors and our board members. We have apologies from Andy Jago, Ian Jones, Richard Larne, Jill Shipsides, Hannah Snelling, Amanda Stratford, Adrian Davis, and Adrian Flynn. And then we have apologies from several of the people that we invited who are partners, and welcome to the partners that are here today. I really am very grateful to see you. The next order of business is to approve the minutes of the meeting from the 11th of September 2023, which we held at Truro Health Park, and that was the first of our new model members meetings, and it was quite fun. So, but we didn't have food. We have food at this one, so each year we're building on it. So the minutes of the meeting are in your pack, and I have not received, they've been on the website and they've been distributed, and I've not received any comments on those to date, but I'm happy to take any comments or corrections to those minutes if anyone would like to make them. And if not, are you content that I sign these as an accurate reflection of the meeting from last year? Answers came there, none at all. So I'm going to assume that that is consent. So thank you very much for that. The next order of business is to tell you about the changes to the Council of Governors. Just to give you a little, you'll pardon me for putting my glasses on and reading, but just a little bit about the Trust. We have 12,409 members. And we're always open for more members. So we're going to have a push to improve that over the next couple of years, increase our engagement. Because the thing about being a foundation trust, we are blessed with governors and members, which is our conduit to the people that we serve. And I take that very seriously. And I do look to the governors to provide that view from the other side, as it were, that keeps us grounded in why we're here. We send 2 newsletters to our members every year, and we have been surveying the members to get feedback, but we're looking at different ways to increase our engagement so that we really start hearing the voices of the people that perhaps we haven't always made it easy to hear. And I think that that's one of the things that we really need to push forward to tackle the health inequalities. And this is a really good route into different communities. And each year we have one governor election. And if any of you that live in the West, put yourself forward to be a governor, because we have elections, we have some vacancies, and we have some election coming up in December. So I'd like to say thank you to the governors who stepped down this past year. Fran Groddick from the Council of the Isles of Scilly has been a stalwart with us, and she hasn't disappeared because she is the deputy chair of the Council of the Isles of Scilly, so she's still heavily engaged with us through our work on St. Mary's. Fiona Higman from the staff, Barry Jordan from the council, Paul Marsden from the staff, Paul Reeve, who's chief executive of Mind. He found it taking up a little bit more time than he could give with his onerous responsibilities at Mind. Christine Smith from the East, Mike Solomon from the East, and Zoe Underwood from the West. So they were stepped down, but they were replaced by Andy Jago from the East, Richard Larne, one of our staff governors. He's one of our consultant psychiatrists, so I was pleased to have representation from that body. Alison Shaw from the East, Hannah Snelling from the East, Nigel Walker remained with us from the West, and Helen Woods, another staff constituency. I was pleased to see our chief pharmacist. So those were the people who joined us this year. That's probably enough of my voice. I'd like to turn over now to Debbie, who will give you a review of the past year and all of the wonderful things that people have done.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Margaret. And if I can also add my welcome to the welcome that Margaret has already given, and a particular thanks to St Austell Hospital for hosting us today, because these... I'm not going to go too far, but I know that the staff are really proud to have us here, and I know that a lot of planning and thought has gone into it, and I'm not going to steal any more of Margaret's thunder, I promise. I can see Steve Williamson is here from RCHT, and certainly the lived experience of a chief exec currently is actually today. It's always today. What are today's challenges? How can we make tomorrow better? And an annual members meeting is always a fantastic opportunity to look back and actually reflect on the challenges, but more importantly, the achievements in the year that has gone by. And I think in terms of timing, for us as an organisation, but for us as residents of Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, it's been quite disheartening to hear the NHS is broken, and that narrative to be running out through the media airways. And I just wanted to start by saying we don't believe our NHS in Cornwall is broken. It's challenged, and it has been challenging, and it continues to be challenging. Steve and I have already spoken today about today's challenges. However, we're challenged, but we're not broken, and we're certainly not beaten. And the reason why I can stand here with absolute confidence to say we're not beaten is actually because of our incredible staff who come to work and turn up tirelessly day in, day out, and they turn up as one team. So they turn up, it isn't just the doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists, the therapists, it's also the other folk that turn up every day to help us, our administrators, our HR, our finance colleagues, estates, and also our amazing volunteers. So this trust is not broken. And we're one team owning our challenges, and we're driving forward improvements. And nothing brought this closer to my mind than yesterday when Margaret and I were invited to one of our community services showcases, and we had fantastic presentations on quality improvement from our colleagues who are making differences day in, day out. And we bumped into one of those colleagues on our way into the building, and she said, "Oh, but my improvement is so small." And it's like, but it's the small improvements that aggregate up and they make a massive difference to patients, and in this case, patients' relatives, but also it's made the staff experience of being at work much more positive. So it's being able to pull all of that together. So we are definitely one team, one CFT, owning our challenges, but also driving forward improvements. And we are looking at what really matters. And another thing I heard yesterday that warmed my heart was that everyone is part of the solution. And I think that really is a sort of mantra that it is so great to hear from our staff when they all feel that they're part of the solution. And what was also great yesterday was that we had colleagues from finance department, AD encouraging our finance folk to come along to listen to some of these improvements, and then beginning to feel they're part of the overall CFT effort. So more to come on that. We have come a long way towards delivering our vision of providing outstanding care for all, but we're not there yet. We're not resting on our laurels at all, but we have made significant progress. And I would commend to you our annual report, and I hope you will all agree with me that this is actually a phenomenal document, and one which I am hopeful that all our staff and governors and colleagues in the room feel proud to be part of this, because this isn't my achievement or Margaret's achievement. This is all of your achievements, and that includes everybody at the back as well. This is something to take home, show your friends, show your neighbours, show your relatives, and celebrate being part of one CFT. So enough of my hyperbole. I'm sure people are wondering, when's she going to get to it? So in terms of, we wanted to provide you just a few ideas of what it is that we've been doing. And we actually wanted to flash up here, because we're on the St Austell site, our amazing elective surgical hub. And we are absolutely delighted and proud as the community provider to have led the infrastructure development for this. And Lee, well done, because you've done an amazing job with your first big project in the Trust. But this facility is going to be led and delivered by the amazing staff at RCHT, at Royal Cornwall Hospitals Trust. And you will have heard from me last year, and you will hear from Steve and I when we do our out and abouts, that this is really built on the success that we've had at Bodmin Hospital with the Community Diagnostic Centre. And now we have a facility in St Austell for St Austell residents as well as Cornish residents to be really proud of. And I certainly know that meeting your staff, Steve, they're really looking forward to this coming about. And once it's fully up and running, that's 5,000 operations that can be delivered here on this site. And also, it means that these operations won't be impacted by any urgent and emergency care challenges, because they're almost, a bit protected from the challenges on an acute site. But also, it's a more comfortable environment for people because it's here on their doorstep. So we're really proud of being playing our part in that. 122,645 people treated in our 10 minor injuries units last year. That's nearly 10%, it's 9.37, I think, increase on the year before. And this year, we're continuing to see an additional number. So our minor injuries units are really well used across the county. And again, we work really closely with RCHT and colleagues to ensure that we can get as many people through those units so that the emergency department is only used for what it is there to be used for. And then all of our range of community services, 703,000, it's people, but they may have had multiple episodes of care, but being supported with their physical health in their communities. So that is quite an incredible number and shows what our people are all about. and then nearly 2,000 people through a virtual ward already, and our capacity is 212. And as Julie was saying earlier, we're leading the way with the step up relationships with primary care, and we're now determined, together with Steve's colleagues, to lead the way on more of the acute pathways. So in terms of the next slide, Pete, let's not forget that we're also a really proud mental health provider, and we haven't spoken much about mental health today yet. That's not because we're overlooking it, but we just want to celebrate 572 mental health admissions in the last year, and that was 17% higher than the year before. And this year, even though we've got some bed constraints, which are well rehearsed, we're on track again to see higher numbers of admissions. So a major thank you to all the staff that are involved in that and our flow team. Our young people have launched an album of new music, and it's been written and performed by them. And today is Siwenna's 5th birthday. And if my voice gives out, it's because I've been down at Siwenna at lunchtime today, where again it was one whole team staff effort, with multiple staff really contributing to that celebration, and so great to see our young people, our most vulnerable and sickest young people, who often are admitted at a time of absolute crisis, actually there. They've designed all the activities and were really throwing themselves into it. We've partnered with Sport in Mind to support recovery and well-being, and Emma and I talk frequently about what are the opportunities where we can go further and faster with mental health support in communities, because we know that actually the support that the VCSE organisations provide to us, that's actually often a more acceptable offering to people, particularly in the preventative space and the step down space. Our children's services are really leading the way. So, you know, nearly 50,000 episodes of outpatient or inpatient care, consultations, assessments, including in schools with our mental health support teams in schools. So very much part of that prevention agenda. And we're working with the community to raise awareness and prevent suicide, where we know that our rates of suicide are too high. So moving on, so our third strategic platform, as it were, is great organisation. So we are increasingly, despite our capital challenges, seeing investment in our 10 community hospitals, and it's largely down to our matrons, and I know Margaret's here. Margaret and I walk the floors, and so they're small incremental improvements, but they're improvements nevertheless. And we need to celebrate what those small improvements are to improve our overall estate. We're looking at activities and exercise to improve well-being and promote independence on all our wards. That's not just community hospital wards, but physical health wards as well, with now some physical general health nurses on our mental health wards. The next development to come online will be our new modular stroke unit down on the Cambourne and Redruth site. I hear it's amazing, and I'm going to see it shortly, but that's going to provide much improved stroke care for local people. We've heard about virtual wards, but one of our community GPs, Dr. Janine Glazier, has led the development of a chest pain pathway, and that diverts over 100 patients a year now from the emergency department. So if you turned up at your GP, Nigel, with certain symptoms, if you meet the criteria, rather than the GP then asking you to go to the A&E department, you can actually come to Cambourne and Redruth, and we've got the point of care testing where we can support you. And if required, you can go home on a virtual ward. So and we've had really good feedback from that. And here's our physio cardiac walls, which we've really trialled in our mental health units. So finally, or nearly finally, we have great people, absolutely great people. I started by acknowledging our great people, but here are some of them here. And we have really, I just wanted to point out this bit here, which is, this was one of the junior ministers coming to celebrate how well we've done as a trust with Grow Our Own Staff and apprenticeships. So, but we've also moved into working not just on adult apprenticeships, but now working with younger people in colleges and schools to support T-levels and T-level placements. And that's just to pick out one element of it. And we've also really benefited from fundraising, charitable funds and volunteers. So when I talk about one team CFT, I hope you can see that we've got a lot to celebrate in that regard. So what do our staff think about working here? Well, I'm delighted to say that for the last 2 consecutive years now, our staff have rated us in the top 3 most improved mental health trusts nationally. So that's something we want to build on. We did start from a low baseline where our staff had a lot to say about their experiences in CFT, but we've continued to listen and learn and to make improvements. And it's heartening to hear from our staff that 89% feel that their role makes a direct difference to patients. 76% feel able to suggest ideas and improvements, and a high number, I mean, of course we want it to be 100%, but a high number and growing of staff who say that patient care is our top priority, they feel valued, that we respect individual differences, and 66% would be happy to recommend us for treatment to a relative. Well, we need to push that up still further. But again, that's part of our improvement journey. So I think you've heard that partnership, working in partnership, threads through everything that we do. I particularly wanted to talk about the work we're doing with supporting adults with a learning disability to start work. And we've had some really great examples this year of work placements and the work that we've done. And that, again, has been a whole team effort to support those young people with good work experience. We're working, as I said earlier, with the ICB and RCHT and UHP in the voluntary sector to deliver more care closer to home. And we've got great ambitions for the next 2 to 3 years. And we're particularly heartened by the Darzi review, where the 3 shifts that are really coming out through that and through government are a shift from hospital to community, a shift from analogue to digital, and a shift from sickness and illness to prevention. And there's so much prevention we can do, but we also know that working with our VCSE colleagues, there's so much more that is possible. So I think I'm probably coming to the end, Pete, of my slides, but so let's not forget our equality, diversity and inclusion. And a big shout out to Annie and Rohan, who were a very small team, but they really have made a fantastic difference to our staff. And I know that one of our colleagues, who largely works remotely, travelled to Cornwall for Cornwall Pride recently. And he's fed back to me directly that he goes to many Pride events. He's been to many over the years, and actually he was so heartened by the community engagement of our Pride event and the support and work that we've achieved. So we've got the Rainbow Award, our fantastic autism acceptance song, which has been recognised nationally, and we held our first culture and diversity conference. So I think, Pete, it's finally, there's one more, isn't there? So I could not resist just that moment of this is what the new integrated health and social care facility for the Isles of Scilly is going to look like. And this is absolute testimony to our staff, to local residents on the island, but also this will be an integrated care home with our hospital facilities, with the ambulance service, with support from RCHT, with support from other mainland services, including mental health and local community groups. And we've not only now cut the ground and welcomed His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, but we're now doing almost weekly workshops. Adi and Tamsin were there most recently, Anita's there today, to look at how are we going to make the most of all the human resources that we have collectively on the Isles of Scilly to really ensure that we are able to support local people in their place of choice. So I think this sums up our ambition for this year, and I'd like to thank you all for listening.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I had it in the reverse order. It's Louise is going to present our quality account. So over to you, Louise, and then Adi will present our financial account.
Thank you, Margaret. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Louise Dickinson. I'm the Director of Nursing and AHPs. I'm here to present the quality account on behalf of Kim O'Keefe, our Chief Nursing Officer, who I think has joined us online. Hard act to follow, thanks Debbie for that. But I've just got 3 slides just to quickly go through some of the priorities in our quality account for this year. For those of you who've actually gone and looked at the quality account, you'll see that it is a huge document. It's over 100 pages. It is on our website if you do want to choose to go and have a look at it. And whilst I'm here presenting it, it is actually a combination of work across the whole trust, across the whole organisation, and many of our colleagues have pulled together to bring this account together. And it is a mandated report that has to be signed off each year and has to be uploaded onto our website. So with it being such a huge document, we've just pulled out a couple of things today just to share with you. Obviously, the quality priorities was the important one to pull out. Last year, we had 4 quality priorities, and you can see what they are there. The colours denote whether or not we've achieved those priorities or the actions within the priorities or not. And you can see that out of the 4, we did only manage to fully achieve 1. Having said that, we've made significant progress on the other 3. In terms of the trauma-informed care programme, it's a 4-year programme, and last year was our 3rd year. We were delayed, probably from year 1 actually, so we did have to take a little bit of a different approach last year, and through our Quality Assurance Committee we agreed that we were just going to look at some key aspects of trauma-informed care against the national standards, which I'm pleased to say that we did progress significantly on. And as you'll see on the next slide shortly, we've got the 4th year of the trauma-informed care programme that we will ensure that those actions will continue into. Have made significant progress on being a trauma-informed organisation, which is really important, not just for our patients, but for our staff as well. In terms of the second one, which was around, second priority was around improving compliance with documentation. Again, this is the 2nd year we've looked at compliance with documentation, and we focused on our community nursing documentation. And again, we've made significant progress on that. There were a couple of things that perhaps quite didn't come into play towards the end of the year, but I'm pleased to say that these are continuing to be addressed during this year and are being overseen by the Clinical Process Design Group for Adult and Community Services, which is a new group that we've managed to establish last year. The 3rd one relates to domestic abuse, really, really important for us as an organisation. And I'm pleased to say that the actions relating to that, which was setting up the steering group and overseeing the delivery of a domestic abuse strategy or vision, has been achieved. We've been really successful in appointing a domestic abuse coordinator who is really driving this forward, both in CFT and within RCHT as well. And the final quality priority for last year was around ensuring that our staff have got the skills and knowledge to care for and protect our patients from self-harm. This was delayed because we were wanting to appoint an individual to lead on this, and despite a couple of attempts to try and recruit somebody, it took us a while to get somebody into that post, and they started in post at the end of Q3. So whilst there was a delay there, we have managed to make some progress, and I'm absolutely confident that she will take this agenda forward and those outstanding actions this year. So those were our priorities last year, and I thought it'd be just useful just to show you what we're focusing on this year. These are our priorities this year. I'm not going to read them out, but just to say they will obviously be incorporated into our quality account next year. We do report progress to our Quality Assurance Committee on a quarterly basis. And one of the things I do want to try and include in our quality account next year, and I'm sure Debbie will agree with me on this, yesterday's event was fantastic, wasn't it, in terms of the quality improvement projects that we have in this organisation. There are many, many more, and we just need to shout more about that, and I really want to ensure that we include much more of the quality improvement elements of what we do as an organisation in that quality report next year. As I said at the outset, there's so much information in that report. What do you pull out? Well, one of the things that I have seen since I've started coordinating this report is how much we've improved within our research portfolio. And these are just some of the key points around research, and obviously the team are here this afternoon. But to grow our research team by 20% is huge, and that's a real significant achievement. We recruited to 31 clinical studies. We are expanding our research portfolio to not just include medical research, we are expanding it across the whole trust so that anybody who's interested in research can take part. 96% of the research participants that we spoke to said they would consider taking part in research again, which I think is phenomenal, really. It just goes to show how well they've been supported during their research trials. So that's all I really wanted to say, and hopefully I've brought us back on track a little bit. So am I handing over to Adi?
Okay, all right, for the really interesting stuff now, right? So first and foremost, just a massive thank you and well done to everyone within the organisation. I think last year, probably one of the toughest years we've seen, particularly the second half of the year. And actually, we got there, didn't we? We got there in the end. So if we go on to the next slide, thank you. So there's some numbers up here. I'll just give you a really quick overview of where we got to. So we had income and expenditure of just shy of 300 million last year. 3/4 of that was spent on staff salaries, which shows, you know, just the type of community organisation that we are. SIP and efficiencies, we did hit just shy of 8 million. We were aiming for 13.5. But the fact that we did that in the second half of the year that stood us in good stead coming into this year. And we know this has been a tough year. You know, I think if you were here this time last year, I was sweating, and it wasn't just because of the heat wave. You know, the second half of last year was probably one of the toughest that we've been through. We stood together and we went on and did it. So after, and it's not on there, we hit it. So we got a surplus of about £36,000. Which, as part of the system break-even, and this is really big for Cornwall, meant that about £100 million worth of system historical debt got written off, which also meant that rather than paying 7 million back per annum into the centre, that can now be reinvested within Cornwall residents. And that's testament not just to us as an organisation, but it's all working together from a system perspective. From an audit perspective, thumbs up. Clean audit, timely, and again, massive thanks to the audit team and the finance team for bringing that all together. I think Lisa would have been having kittens if it had been any, closer to the deadline, but we were all signed off in a really timely manner. Key concerns. So there was one main key concern, and that was around the financial sustainability. Now, I think there's a number of organisations across the country that has come up, particularly with the financial environment. And I think we're starting to feel that in this financial year as well, aren't we? So we know this year's tough. But halfway through the year, I'm not sweating as much. We are actually doing what we said we were going to do. And that's testament not just to finance, that's operational teams, clinical teams everywhere. We effectively just count the money at the end, do you know? So big thank you to everyone on that side of things. And I just want to leave you with three things, really. Firstly, just a massive big thank you, because it makes our lives a lot easier when we're all kind of together doing what we need to do. Be proud of where we are and what we've achieved. So as Debbie has said, you know, looking back, you can see all of those things. You can see that we spent 26 million on capital. Now that's seven times what we'd normally be spending. And you've seen that, you know, the establishments that we're building, which are going to be good for all of the residents of Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. And then just keep going and look after each other. It's going to be another tough year. We're all feeling it. We haven't fallen out yet. So I've got high hopes for this year, and I think next year will be tough, and then I think we're on the right track. All right.
Thank you very much, David. Okay. This is your opportunity. If you have any questions for any of us, that we'll be happy to answer them. Don't jump all in at once. I guess it just shows how thorough our presentations have been, that we've answered all the questions before you even knew you had them. So feel free to tackle any of us while we're having our refreshments. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to give a big thank you to everybody that was, for the whole trust, the Council of Governors, Board of Directors, and our members, for the support that you give us. I'd like to say a special thank you to Sarah and Emma and Pete and Lisa and Joe for pulling all of this together and making such a beautiful job of this annual members meeting and our annual report. The short version, which is easy to read and enjoyable. And I've read many annual reports in my lifetime, and I can easily say that this is the best. So thank you for that. I'd like to thank Margaret West and her lovely staff. I always enjoy it when I get to come to St. Austell Hospital, for hosting us today and providing such lovely facilities. And to say happy birthday to St. Austell Hospital. It's 60 years old this year. So we will be having a cake to celebrate, which brings us on to thanking our GSA workers who have provided us with a really lovely afternoon tea. So I think we should give them, Margaret and St. Austell, a big round of applause and a happy birthday cheer. So. Happy birthday, St. Austell Hospital. Margaret, come up and blow out the candles. Almost, you and me both. Don't tell anybody. So, pop it here and let Margaret blow it out for make a wish. Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, St. Austell Hospital. Happy birthday to you. Hooray! And thank you to all for coming today. Thank you particularly to our colleagues. You've just slipped out, but our colleagues from RCHT and from the community, because that means so much to me and to all of us to have you here with us today. So thank you. Let's have some tea. Thank you.